Pajo Gobind Pool mat jah Manas janam ka ehi laah Pajo Gobind Pool mat jah मानस जानम का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद भूल मत जा मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
So, welcome friends to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who once again wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, especially for the modern age. That is further supported by the Holy Masters, perfect saints and noble mystics of Sant today. Now this high truth of the ages is the noble path of Sant, path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality or true religion, that is so graciously gifted to seeking humanity by the great holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics in every age, who are themselves the true representative of the Supreme Lord even today. And although little known among the masses, once encountered, a sincere truth seeker can easily recognize that this noble path or true way encompasses all true faiths and beliefs as the noble source of all, details of which can be found in our humble literature, spiritual centers, or YouTube channel, as well as in the Holy Discourse series of ISTAuk.com. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction about who we are and what we represent here today. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short, and although now global, we originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Savan Singh Ji of the holy lineage of Sant in India, the Levant and Persia. Now our given mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view, especially for the modern age, while also correcting the confusions of the past and even that of the present about what is the real truth. Yet this high teaching is not new. It is the age-old path of true spirituality, known today as the Holy Truth of Sant, which in fact has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religions or philosophical teachings that we all know of. Indeed, Holy Masters tell us that the simple teachings of mass religion and mass philosophy are only there to elevate the masses to the position of higher truth seeking, so that they can understand and ultimately practice true spirituality or true religion. Therefore, our mission here today is simple: to impart the very highest truth of the Supreme Lord to those who wish to know, with all the love, grace and wonder that such a gift entails. Now for those who do listen and take heed, Holy Masters tell us that they are indeed the most fortunate ones of humanity. As for myself, I am a sincere devotee of the very highest truth of Sant, who has given his life in the service of the true Lord. As such, I do not seek any recognition, praise or reward, as I only act with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself and the Holy Masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life and creation for the modern age. I humbly speak, therefore, as one who has been gifted with true knowledge of that high truth, and as one who lives in the Supreme Lord's will. Thus I offer my humble demonstration and knowledge to all who seek the same. Now, as a friend on this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human form, and instead listen to and take heed of the loving message that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form, who has himself been transformed by the Holy Masters of today. Thus, I represent the proof that truly anyone can rise above their given karmic role, to become truly noble once again, by the true Lord's grace, if only they earnestly seek it. Therefore, everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom direct from the true Lord itself, for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth. In this way, I am a humble servant and perfect friend, whom the true Lord has gifted with direct knowledge of the holy truth, which I have been asked to share with you. So although I shall speak with the authority of one who has been instructed to do so by the Supreme Lord, please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble messenger in any way, for you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the highest authority, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you. Now, for those who need further assistance, they may privately contact the main speaker directly via email or video by first subscribing to our valuable information service at ISTAuk.com and then requesting the direct contact details of our main speaker from our administrator. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual queries within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule and sheer number of inquiries. Thank you. Let's now begin with the general question and answer session from our spiritual truth inquirers as well as the audience.
Thank you. The first question is around masters, and this question is actually directed at you, main speaker. The last time you mentioned that Kabir Sahib was Dayal Purush, and that there are two types of masters, Karuna and Dayal. Please elaborate more on this subject.
Okay. You see, throughout the ages, the world goes through different phases known as yugas, which mean that there are different levels of spiritual energy in the atmosphere. So we've just passed through something called Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, which is the most ignorant of ages for humankind, where their spiritual vibration is at the lowest, closest to the animals. Now we've entered Dwapar Yuga, which is the first stage of spiritual awakening. And we have a couple of thousand years of this to go before we progress to the next stage of spiritual evolution. Now, in each of these eras, masters appear to help us. And the corresponding attribute of those masters, that is one of the original 16 attributes of the Supreme Lord or sons, come to suit the population of the time. So during the Kali Yuga, Dayal Purush used to come, And Dayal is the compassionate, merciful one. That's what it means. So their role was to mercifully put people onto the path, not looking at all at anything that they were doing. Because knowing full well that in Kali Yuga, people are in survival mode. They are existing and surviving as best they can. And also there's not that high level of spiritual vibration that allows them to query higher spiritual truths. Only rare ones do so, very rare. So in Kali Yuga, masters come in greater number, and they are representative of mercy. Now, Karuna, which is the other form of master, the type that will incarnate in this era, are the masters of forgiveness. Now, this is the stage, you could say, where people are starting their spiritual awakening, but they're going to be involved in all kinds of things, not necessarily very spiritual. In the name of spirituality, they will be involved in New Age stuff and kind of strange and wonderful things. Now, because they have a spiritual awareness, they understand the concept of spirituality to some extent. A different type of master needs to come, or a different attribute needs to come to educate them. One who perhaps has a more intellectual point of view. So this master we call Karuna Purush, which is the forgiveness master, because they forgive our egos that we have attained through our little bit of knowledge. We have a small slice of the pie of spirituality now. So much information has been circulated, and we think we know what spirituality is, we think we know what we're doing. So now masters come as forgiveness. Because if they didn't forgive us and said, okay, you are pursuing your version of spirituality, no one would be saved. So Karuna Dayal come at this time in Treta Yuga. And then in Sat Yuga, another master comes, some type. So the three types that go through the 4 eras of human evolution. So that's really the meaning. And in fact, interestingly, in this time, Karuna Purush appeals to the intellect, because the intellect is the bridge between the emotional mind of the Kali Yuga and the spiritual mind of Sat Yuga. So the intellect bridges the two minds. So that's why the satsangs in this era will be philosophically intellectual, because they have to satisfy the intellectual mind so that the mind goes along with it and allows to access the spiritual awareness mind.
Thank you. This is like a 2-question question, you could say. How can we love the master, or does this naturally become more intense as we progress on the path?
You see, as I've mentioned before, no one can love the master of truth unless that love is given to them first. Because everything in this creation is run in perfect order. When it is a time for a disciple to become enlightened and therefore to start falling in love with the high truth that the master represents, that has to be placed within them. Otherwise, in their human form, in their character that they are playing, the mind does not comprehend such a love. The mind is fond of mystery and of intrigue and of drama, not of high truth. High truth is boring to the mind because it means leaving the state of the mind and going beyond it. So the mind has no interest in it. So the love of the master is a gift by a master given to a sincere seeker of the high truth, so that they may love the truth that that master represents and therefore devote themselves to the master. Bhakti, we call this bhakti, devotional. That's why Sant Mat is a bhakti path, the path of love and devotion. Because the lovers of truth will devote themselves to the embodiment of truth, and masters represent the embodiment of truth. So that's why they always say, practice with love and devotion, but they never really expanded upon this. So I'm just explaining what they mean by this love and devotion, because for most people, this love is an emotional love. They understand human love, emotional love. But this is a different type of love. This is a love that does not seek any selfish gain. This is a love for the sheer sake of it, the love of truth, because that truth becomes a need within the disciple. So when the disciple is ready, the need comes in them for this truth. And when it becomes a need rather than a curiosity, then the love is a gift from the master, because then they have to fall in love with the one who gives the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. Is it true that Ishwar Puriji was a Buddha in his previous lifetime?
Yes, that's true. He's actually said it himself as well. It's true. My own understanding, my own experience is that he was the Buddha when I was unarmed. I was one of the leading disciples in the group. So Ishwarji and I go back several lifetimes together, working together. I've always been the intellectual one, you could say, or the script writer, or the one who collected the information and put out the wisdom, and he was always the leader. So yes, it's true, he was the Buddha.
Thank you. Actually, I've got a question. It's not down here, it just came to me. As you know, I've been initiated by 2 perfect living masters.
Yes.
And for some reason, initially it was Supreme Master Ching Hai.
Yes.
The second one was Ishwar Puriji.
Uh-huh.
But somehow, because I know you always talked about the last one that you get initiated by is the one that will take you home, so to speak.
Yes.
So why am I getting this pull to want to listen to Master Ching Hai's videos? And I'm thinking of her more so. And there's part of me that's even, I don't know why, it's kind of sympathizing with her, feeling sorry for her. And I know that's my emotional side.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what is all that about.
You've actually explained it well. It is emotional. When we have an emotional connection with the being of the master, rather than what they are saying, the truth, then that's the problem, because then we favor one over another. In truth, masters are of different levels, but they come from the same essence of truth. And each one appeals to a different audience. So Supreme Master has an audience mainly for the Easterners, the people who are very emotionally led. And people who are emotionally led, they tend to favor somebody who comes across very emotionally, very warm-heartedly, very assuringly, very humanly. Yeah. Ishwarji has a more intellectual approach, more Western based, where people have this truth curiosity. They're not so much concerned with the personage of the person, but more with what they represent, and therefore the person, because they represent that. So it's a slightly different audience. So depending on the mindset you're having at the time, you may swing between one and another. And this is perfectly natural, because both of them are beyond the physical. So whichever one you cling on to for that time, enjoy the experience. And always keep in track your spiritual progress, your meditation, because ultimately in meditation all will be revealed. If you only just listen to satsangs, you only read the books and scriptures, you only chat amongst friends, there's a limit to what this can do. It doesn't generate that personal awareness. Now, the personal awareness is the object of sampad, and that's why the saints have prescribed meditation or contemplation, to allow you to experience that personal knowledge, that personal awareness. And then it won't be a question of the mind trying to decide what it is and what it is not. You'll have a direct experience of it, and therefore you become a knower rather than just a believer.
Sure. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions around supreme beings. First one is, how can we hear a response from God when we have asked for help?
Generally, most people don't. Simply because, you have to be able to receive as well as transmit a signal. You have to be able to recognize and tune in, like a radio. A radio, let's say you speak, but you haven't got the receiver turned to the right frequency. You can't hear the other side. You just hear noise and it's confusion. When you're tuned in really well through spiritual practice, then you can hear the replies. It's not that the replies don't come. The replies are always there. Nobody's ignored. And in this case, for example, from a holy master's point of view, rather than a religious point of view, the masters know your limitation, that you haven't tuned in yet. So they'll give you coincidences, examples, things around you to try and give you an idea of what you should do. But then you have to be even receptive to that. You have to be even aware as a human being, let alone as a spiritual being. If you're not even aware as a human being, then you'll miss all the cues, all the clues that the master throws at you, even sometimes blatantly, and you won't recognize it. You know? Yes.
Can you give us some examples of coincidences the masters might use?
Well, I mean, for example, you might ask the master, please help me for a parking space. Yeah? And suddenly a car pulls out in front of you, and therefore a parking space becomes available. How many times do you thank the master? Or do you just think, oh, I'm lucky? You know, or you might say to yourself, if you're not spiritual, oh, don't worry, master, I don't need your help now, I've just found one. Without understanding the connection, that one preceded the other. Or, for example, you might be struggling for a decision to make, and you might have several choices. So you ask the master for help. Which one should I choose? You know, I'm not capable of making a right choice. Then suddenly a phone call may come, an email will come. You might even just glance across and see a message that relates to one of the answers. And suddenly you think, okay, that makes you think of a particular one. Say thank you. But you have to be aware. Many coincidences, we call them coincidences, happen in a person's life, and it's particularly in the satsang life, to edge them towards the right choice or the right understanding. So, but it does take a bit of practice to recognize even the coincidences. You know, if you don't have that telepathic spiritual communication, then the coincidences are there. But the masters always reply. They do their best with your limitation, short of bopping on the head with a hammer and saying, listen to me, yeah, which they can't do, it's against the law, the natural law of creation. They give you cues everywhere. And if you're not even picking them up, this is master says, what can I do now? So, you know, that's how it is with us. Yeah.
I was just thinking, so would something happen that may not be the best thing at that time, but that could be another
warning.
Happens.
You could get a warning, for example. Let's say you're embarking on the wrong journey and something really goes wrong and it keeps going wrong. It keeps happening. That thing's not meant for you, but you're not picking up the cues.
So it's like getting slapped so many times until you...
and you just can't figure out, why is it not working out, no matter what I do. Keeps on happening.
Maybe it wasn't meant for you.
It's not meant for you, or not meant for you at that time.
Yes.
So this is another thing. Never give up. But if you persist, if you carry on, and despite your persistence at different times, it still doesn't happen, then absolutely it's not for you. So therefore, don't give up straight away. If you feel sure that this is a good thing for you, but you don't actually know, then try again another time. But if you keep getting at different times a knockback, then there's definitely, it's not for you. You know, you can take that. So don't immediately give up.
Sure, thank you. The last question regarding supreme beings. Why is Lord Shiva known as the destroyer?
Because that's what he represents. Out of the Trinity in Hinduism, which you have Brahma the creator, Vishnu or Krishna the sustainer, and Shiva or Mahesh the destroyer. They represent the entirety of creation because their role is to create the material creation for us to enjoy as souls. One has to create, the other one then sustains it, which is the current phase we're in, and then you have to destroy, the one who folds it all up in the end. Now, interestingly, there's a debate about this among, say, Hindu followers, about which one should they follow. If they follow Brahma, well, his job is already done. So what are they going to get out of following the creator? Because he's done his job, so he's retired. Now we're in the phase of Krishna or Vishnu. So there's a big following, the Vaishnavites, who follow Krishna in one form or another. Because they say, well, he's current. You know, he's the one who's sustaining everything, so we should pray to him. But then you have those others say, well, ultimately, Shiva is the end of everything. Everything lies in his hands because he's the one who holds the power of when to dissolve the creation. So therefore, if he's the ending, what happens then after the ending? Maybe we should throw our lot in with him. So you have the Shivites, the people who follow Shiva, the Lord of Destroyer, which is quite an odd thing to worship, a destroyer, because it's considered negative. But in their eyes, it's not. In their eyes, they're thinking, well, let's throw our lot in with the one who has the final say. So that's why in Hinduism you have this trinity of demigods.
Thank you. Right, I've got a question about love. It's quite long, so I'll just read it all and then I'll ask the separate questions. I would like to ask a question about the role of love, empathy and compassion. I acknowledge what was said about conditional love and that many are capable of great acts of selfless love towards others. Example, a mother's love towards a child, or just great service to others out of kindness and compassion. I have always viewed love and compassion, even the most watered down human version, as a currency of the soul. Is this not the case? Jesus said to love others as you would love yourself, and that the greatest commandment was love. What is the truth of this? It seems to me that the world is suffering from a deficit of love and compassion at times rather than an excess of it. Did you get the essence of that?
I think, yes, I'm trying to see if I can answer it in a succinct way for all the parts to it. The bit about selfless love is a rare thing. An example of selfless love is, for example, a mother for the child. That's the closest we get to selfless love. All other loves are conditional, in the sense that as long as you're getting something out of the deal, then you give love. So it's more of a transaction rather than a genuine thing. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to compassion and empathy and all those things, this is the beginning of a higher form of love. Because compassion generally doesn't seek a reward. Although some people, under disguise of compassion, do kind things, but they expect to be recognized at least for it, even if they don't get anything monetary out of it. So it's a middle ground that people explore in their journey to love. And I think they asked that love and compassion is a watered down version of...
Is it the currency of the soul?
Currency of the soul.
Do you believe that?
No, you see, the soul is an essence of the Almighty, of the Lord itself. Therefore, all attributes are contained within the soul. The attribute of love that the soul experiences is very different to any human love understanding, and certainly beyond any understanding of the mind. The mind does not comprehend the love of the soul. So when we talk about those who are in a level of soul love, really the mind doesn't get it at all. And it's difficult to explain that type of love to the mind. So we say that this is unconditional love. Because this type of love seeks no reward. It's a giver only. It doesn't want anything in return. It enjoys giving. Now this is alien to the mind, because whatever the mind does, it expects a result. You know, whatever I do in life as a mind being, I expect some sort of outcome. I expect some sort of result. A fortunate one that is fortunate for me, one is beneficial to me. Yeah, one is something that I want. But the soul doesn't operate like that. The soul enjoys observation. So the soul is an observational platform. And as an observer, it gives and then observes. So you could say it's getting a kind of reward because of observing the effect of giving. But this is very different to emotional love or human love or love based upon some sort of transaction.
It's not conditional.
It's not conditional because it's just observing that what it is, the result of that love. So that is the level of the soul's love. And regarding the deficit of love in the world, definitely there's a great deficit, because none of the anger, greed, misery, wars, hatred would occur if everybody was a lover. People know on a personal level, once you fall in love, suddenly you forgive everything. They call it wearing rose-tinted glasses. Everything looks wonderful when you're in love, right? Even the worst things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, yeah? Because I'm in love, I don't care, right? Mm-hmm. That's an interesting state for the mind. The mind gets so overwhelmed by this type of love that it loses its logical reasoning and so on, and it no longer hates, no longer has energy for anger, no longer has a desire to want other things. It just wants the beloved, because even the mind, in some extent, was created out of love as a tool to experience a worldly form of love. Because when Carl created the mind form for human beings to experience, he is the embodiment of love from his own father, Satgurus. So although he's the ego attribute, he still contains the love essence. That cannot be ruled out of Carl's creation, even so he's considered to be a negative power, evil and satanic and whatever you may label him as. He still has the element of love in his own way. And that is translated in the creation through the mind. So the mind looks for this emotional, intellectual love as a substitute for the real thing, until it gets the real thing. So yes, there's a deficit of even this type of love in the creation currently, because most people are so preoccupied with their selfish needs that they don't have time for love, or they don't encounter it sufficiently. And that's because we've just come out of the Kali Yuga that I mentioned earlier, the age of animalistic behavior, more survival mentality, and we're only now starting to explore the first level of Dwapara Yuga, which is the first level of spiritual awareness. So over this century and the next, then this spiritual love will grow. So it is on the mend, despite the negative feeling that this questioner has. It is improving.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions regarding reality. First one is, it's quite a long one as well. The masters say that this reality is an illusion. Could this mean that we are currently only conscious of what we are allowed to be conscious of from a higher source, meaning that our earthly consciousness is being manipulated from what true reality is, and that this is therefore a type of simulated consciousness reality and not true reality? If so, who is doing this and why? Is it a type of trap?
Yes, this one's obviously intellectualizing the concept of reality from non-reality. You see, if the Lord is the only thing in the entire creation, manifested in different forms, can anything exist but the Lord in different forms? And if that's the case, then all elements of the creation are following the dictate of the Lord, the law, this particular natural law that the Lord has placed. Let's take it down to the physical level, because there are other levels of existence. So in this level of existence, the physical world, we have what they call the natural law, universal law, karmic law. And this law determines how all things contained within this creation should behave. In addition to that, because this universe is perfectly ordered, every single part of it, whether it's an atom or a human being, has a script to follow. They have a timeline of events because they're moving through the timeline of events. So let's say this creation is 311 trillion years of span. Over that time, human beings, for example, would have to endure certain things, go through their timeline of events, for the adventure of it, for the drama of it, for the experience of it, and then ultimately be saved. So, does anyone have free will, which is the connotation of this question? The answer is no. Yes, you are being directed from on high. The script is laid before you, and you're following the script automatically, because the mind is like a computer machine. It just follows the script. It doesn't know anything else. It only knows how to follow the script and how to generate thoughts and feelings surrounding that script that they're allowed to. So in a way, they said, are you allowed to be conscious of what you're like? Yes. You will only experience that which is in your script. You cannot go outside of the script. So when the time comes and it is for you to expand your consciousness or to experience another thing, you will. It's not that you have made those choices, But it looks like that because in the script it's written the part that you have to place yourself in a certain place and time or meet a certain person, and suddenly your consciousness is expanded. And it looks like you're doing these things, but you're not. You're just following the script. Actually, if you want to be a realist about this.
Yeah, because you might have made a decision about something, but that decision was already...
Where did the decision come from?
Yeah,
why did you make that decision?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Go to the root cause of decision making. What makes you make that decision? The masters talk about samskars, which are characteristics brought with us to suit our particular life. So that samskars are related to our particular life. So we're going to have to make certain decisions or feel certain things or react in certain ways according to the script. If anybody acted out of the script, the whole universe will be in chaos. It is simply not possible. The fact that we have perfect order in this universe, whether it's on the atomic level, fundamental particle level, even they follow the script, or a human level, we have order. Now the smart ones, let's say the ones who discover this because they've been explained this by their good fortune, by an enlightened one, will say, okay, if I can't beat this universe and I can't win over it, I can't do anything, I should want to get out. I want to go back to my source. And that's exactly what the holy spiritual path is all about, Sant. They say, don't worry about trying to make this a better place unless it's your hobby, your interest. Your central theme should be get out. Get away from this, because you can't change the course of events. But if your script says, you know what, while you are getting out of here, doing your spiritual practice, you may as well do something here. Yeah. Let's be a humanitarian. Let's be a promoter of healthy lifestyles and healthier things and so on. Why not? Then if that's in you, you do it. Similarly, if it's in you to become a monk, withdraw from society and practice spirituality, fine, that's your thing. Neither one is right or wrong for the individual. Everyone has been given the script and they have to follow the script. And then they end with who's doing this and why. Well, you could say, depending on where you're looking at it from, as a human being, and an unenlightened human being, you say that God is doing it. The Lord is doing this. He's in charge of the script. It's his play. He's doing everything. But then when you become enlightened and go to the level of the source, then you realize you're doing it. You are the Lord. You're part and parcel of this. You have made an agreement with the source that you're going to play this part very well. So who is to blame? It depends from which perspective you're looking.
Thank you. Right, the next question regarding reality. Is it possible that our collective, in brackets, of all our kin souls, perception of reality plays a big role in the nature of this reality, and this is why masters like Supreme Master Ching Hai are advocating to be more compassionate and to go vegan, etc.? Is it possible that this perception has been controlled by external negative entities and hence why humanity is where they are now?
I think there's 2 or 3 parts to that question. It's not a long question. The first part is talking about collective karma, which is a very interesting point. A lot of, there's not much known, little is known about this because people are more concerned with their personal experience, and rightly so in Sant Mat, it is about you and the Lord. So, but for general interest point of view, everybody you meet in this life, everybody you encounter, even if you bump into a passerby, are all part of your drama, your stage, your play of life. And you all came together to play these roles. So the collective consciousness or the collective karma, which is our kin souls, they're all our other self playing the part, because actually it's all us playing different parts, although we don't know that yet. Each one has a different perception of reality. But the truth is that we're all from the same source, we're all in the same drama, and we're all playing our part. But each one looks at it from a different angle, different point of view. So we say at once there's a collective of souls who've all made an agreement to play a part, to create a drama, when they descended from such kind or projected themselves from such kind. But then you also have the individuals at the same time having their own individual experience. So when you look at it only as an individual, then it looks like, oh, all these people are unrelated to me, but they're in my life. What part do they have to play? But then when you look at it as a whole, let's say you rise further up through the spiritual realms and you see the collective of consciousness, then you realize, wow, this person's this person that. They're all part of my adventure, part of my experience, part of my drama that I've come here to play with for a while. So it depends on the perspective.
Isn't there lots of collective and karma?
Yes.
Because you could say when you're at work, that's another level, collective. Your family.
No, it's bigger than that. They number in millions and trillions of souls. So for example, any encounter you have with creation and with the lives in creation are all part of your collective karma. Now imagine how many times you've encountered things, whether you're in a shopping center, you just see somebody physically walking past you. You don't even make contact, but you note their existence. You see the shops, you breathe the air. Everything is part of your collective consciousness, collective karma. But only that space in which you're in. So for example, you may never go to Mongolia. Therefore, you'll never meet a Mongolian or be in the Gobi Desert or eat Mongolian food because it's not in your collective. The people who have that in their collective, that's their collective karma. So these collections of individuals are separate completely. They never actually merge. They have their own totally separate existence. And that is all they know. They will never encounter somebody from another collective, no matter how hard they try. If they do manage to connect with anybody in this creation or anything or object, it's because it's part of their set. But they cannot do anything outside this set. Now, because the collective karma, the stage is so vast and so detailed that it looks like everything is part of our collective. Because everything that we experience, everything that we see through our senses is part of our collective. That which is not before us, that which is not known to us, isn't. And there is so much, this universe is so much bigger than we understand. Yet we experience a small slice of the pie of this experience. And this is our collective experience in which we undergo both individual experiences and a collective experience. But it's very big. It's not, even a chance viewing of somebody or looking at a beautiful flower or a building is part of this. Everything that comes before you via the five senses directly, not inconceptually, but directly is part of your collective experience. So you can imagine how vast this is.
So everything serves a purpose.
Of course. Either it's entertainment, teaching, or it's inflicting a result, a consequence.
Thank you. Right.
Yes.
You said in the last satsang that you say that everything is vast and enormous. But you also said in the last satsang that if you don't focus on anything, it doesn't exist. So if I don't focus on the universe or don't focus outside of my vicinity, then does that exist? You said it doesn't.
Not for you. We talk about reality perception. That's a slightly different point. So your reality varies according to where you are. For example, now your reality is in this room with these other people looking at me. That is your entire reality. Whilst you have a family back home, they're not before you. Then you don't use your senses to pick them up. Therefore, if we look at the description of reality, which is something that you detect with your senses, then they no longer exist. But they actually do exist because they're part of your collective consciousness. So your reality is different. Your personal reality that you're projecting and seeing in front of you at every moment changes moment by moment. But the collective consciousness of all the beings that you come with for the drama exists regardless. That is why you can switch between realities. You don't have one reality. You have countless numbers of them, because whatever you project before you is your reality at that time. So that's the difference between the two.
So what do you mean by, if you could just slightly expand on what you said about ultimately we're playing every role?
Yes. An even bigger picture, let's say beyond what I've just said, everything is you. In order to create the whole drama of creation, all elements must be manifested, all elements must be played. Now, if the source is one, if we say there's one supreme consciousness from which everything emanates, and this consciousness has no second, then tell me what else is there in this creation other than this manifestation of this one consciousness. It cannot be. Now, that means that you and the Lord are one when you merge. But because you have manifested yourself in countless forms, all the forms in creation are all other versions of you, to experience the creation from another angle. And I've explained in the past that imagine you're a sculptor and you've created a very beautiful masterpiece and you stand in the room looking at it from only one angle at a time. You have to circle the whole thing to see from every perspective. But imagine now you're the Lord and you have created a masterpiece and you want to experience every angle at the same time, because you can. You simply manifest countless numbers of yourself, infinite numbers, so you can see it from infinite angles. So that is the authority you have when you're one, when you're at the Lord's level. But then each of the manifestations sees it from a particular angle and gains a particular viewpoint or perception, which is not real, but is real for them. So that reality of individuality is real when you're looking at something from a particular angle, from a particular perspective. But ultimate reality is to see all realities at once. Yeah? And that is the high truth. And that's what we talk about when we look at the very higher consciousness point of view. So when you're looking at it from the Lord's point of view, there's only one reality, because all realities become one. But it sees itself from different angles. But from a participant point of view in creation, from an individual point of view, you see a particular reality. So that's the difference between these types of reality. I hope that answers your question. I know it's complicated, but when you see it, personally, it makes sense.
So it's that where the idea comes from, where there's no right and wrong.
That's right.
There's no judgment.
Well, how can there be judgment or right or wrong if the entire creation is scripted? Where is the right and wrong? That's like going to a film set, you're an actor on the stage, you have a script, the villain is doing his part, and you start punching the villain because he's playing the evil one. But he said, I'm just following the script, why are you hitting me? Talk to the director if you don't like the script. You see, so the director of the play knows the part that each one has to play. He also knows there's no reality to anything that they're doing. But as a participant, that is shielded from them. In order to convincingly play the part, you have to pretend you're ignorant for a while.
Yes, I've listened to a few ND, near-death experiences where people have had, not near-death, channeling, where they've channeled someone from who's crossed over.
Yes.
And when they speak to people, those who have committed horrendous crimes and stuff here before they crossed over, they've said they've been welcomed on the other side and congratulated sometimes for their part they played and their role that they played in this world. So
okay, let me explain that, because it's a difficult subject area. The law, or the natural law that governs the three worlds of creation, is absolute. No one is outside of those laws, not even the masters. The masters have to go through the physical body, they have to eat, grow up, live in the physical world, suffer the physical problems of the world. Some of them have even been tortured and so on. They cannot, even the masters cannot go against the law. That's why Jesus said, I've come here to uphold the law, not to change it, because nobody can change the law. Not even the master changes the law. You'd have to do a new creation for that. So masters do not change the law. Now, in this law, there are certain experiences that a soul or an individual jiva, mind, soul complex will undergo. When you enter the astral realm upon death, so you've passed on, as you said, moved on, immediately the king judge, Dharamraj, who resides at the lower end of the astral realm, immediately sends his yamduts, his servants, the lords of death, to collect you. So they take you then to the court, in which you'll be sitting in a pen, like a purgatory state, waiting for your trial 49 days later. Another story of how that all happens. So, if this is the case from each and every one, then how can, say, somebody who has done very bad deeds, like you say, be congratulated as a mind? However, beyond the level of the mind, let's say now, but this is not the case for a channeler. A channeler is always within the realms of mind. And let me tell you about the tricks and fantasies of the mind that play a part, and they think that they're having an experience. At the level of the soul, it's a very different thing. What you have described is what masters and enlightened ones experience from the level of the soul. Looking down at the play of the character that was going on, and the other souls say, yes, you've played this part very beautifully. The Lord says you've played this part very beautifully. Maybe that of a villain. But that is much higher than any channeler can receive. So when you channel and you're channeling spirits, say spirit guides, most of the people you're meeting are demonic. They're what we call rakshas. And these ones play different parts. Some of them can pretend that you're on your side, give you what you want, make you feel good about something, or give you misinformation. They enjoy misinforming you because then they can see the consequence of it. What else do they have to do? As rakshas, they're going through their demonic tendencies. They don't have good ideas to impart. They want to corrupt and play with humanity in some way or another. It's not always evil. They're not always there to possess you and take over your body and kill you or something, as some of the dramatists say. But they do have a playful nature. And their playful nature means that sometimes when people channel, they will come across these playful entities who will play all sorts of tricks upon them. So it's very difficult to know whether what you're experiencing through channeling is real or not. And that's why masters say steer away from it. All masters say keep away from these psychic phenomena, from this channeling, from all this, because you only get confused.
When you say that the Yonduts come to collect you, and is that the case for every soul?
Every soul except initiated. Yeah, all those who are not initiated, because when you're initiated by a perfect living master, the master himself appears and stands. The Yanduts still come, or the Ramduts indeed, because we talk about Yanduts are the ones who are sent from the negative point of view, because you don't have enough merit. Let's say you're not going to go to heaven. But the Ramduts also exist. The Ramduts are the ones who take you to heaven, but you still have to go through the trial, but they're a more pleasant experience. Now, depending on your lifestyle, how you've lived your physical life, a Dut will come. The Duts will come. And the master then appears as a barrier, a shield between you and the Duts. So although the Duts still come to claim anybody who's died, because that's their role, they're automated. They just follow the instructions of their Lord, Dharamraj, without question. Anyone who dies, they have to be greeted by the Duts. But then the master stands in the way and says, no, this one belongs to me. And he shows his authority to them. They recognize the authority and they run back to the court and say to Dharamraj, this soul has been captivated by this Lord, and he's greater than Dharamraj, so we have no authority, no jurisdiction here. It's not that they don't try, but they still come. So then the experience is very different. When an initiate dies, the master then greets them very nicely and takes them to a certain place where they have a little discussion. And the master will ask, what have you done with your life to show me? And that's when everything will be explained. You'll say what you've done. And then if you don't have enough merit to go on further spiritually, you have to come back into the creation because you've not quite got it right yet, let's say. Then master will negotiate with you. How do you want to play this? Do you want to stay here for a long period of time and meditate? Or do you want to do a much shorter stint in the physical suffering world and then come back to me afterwards? So that's the choice that's given. Whereas in the Dharamraj court, there is no choice. When you stand on trial, you don't have any say whatsoever because it's based upon what you've already done. And they have the record of it.
Does he actually play out like a court, like we have a court here?
Not exactly the same way, but yes, you have the Dharamraj, which is the king judge, and you have all the servants of the court, the administrators, who then take you to the relevant place, and the record keeper, the one who puts the record in the Akashic records. So yes, it's a court. It's Dharam Raj is definitely the biggest one. They're very massive compared to you, and when he comes right before your face, it's very intimidating. So it's not something that's ever been described as pleasurable. No masters have ever described the court as something of pleasure or enjoyment. You go there because you're being trialed. And you're being trialed because of something. Yeah? So it's not a pleasure experience. Even when the Ramduts come to get you and you're going to go to heaven, you still have to go through a trial. Because you just don't know. The unknowing still is there. Because you've not met a perfect living master to save you. You have to go through the unknowing. Even so, the end result will be you go to heaven for a while. But you still have to go through the judge. That's why the religions talk about Judgment Day and judgment. Even for people who've followed that religion and died, let's say they've done it perfectly, they've followed all the instructions of that religion, they still have to be judged. Masters do not judge. So the initiate of a perfect living master, there's no question of what have you done with your character, who your character was, what accolades you attained, how much wealth you had, how much business, how successful you had. No. They only look at your spiritual merit. What spiritual merit you have gained.
So Dharam Rai is following a universal book of
Yes,
law.
absolutely, to the letter.
And that's handed down by who?
By Kal.
Okay.
Yeah, he's leader. So Kal, the negative power from the mind, has decreed a law called the Vedas. So he uttered the 108 Vedas, of which 4 survive today. In Satyug, there are 108 Vedas available. We only have 4 now, starting with the Rig Veda, the oldest one, and so on. And this law, they enshrine the law of this creation. And the servants of Kal, because everything below him is a servant of Kal, including his 3 sons, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, observe the law to the letter. There's no deviation, no question, it's absolute. There's no mercy, no forgiveness, nothing of that. That doesn't exist in judgment. Judgment by its very connotation is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. As you sow, so shall you reap, and all of that. Where is the room for judgment? There's no mitigation in the court. However, when you're initiated by a perfect living master and you die then, and the master greets you within, there's much room for maneuver. So that's the difference.
But the master still has to follow that law.
Sorry?
The master still
Yes, they still have to confine within the law. But the difference is, within the law, there are always loopholes. Yeah, even within law here, if you go to a good accountant, they'll work ways round. And so the master is a master accountant. He knows the law backwards, forwards, upside down. So he knows how to play within the law. But he plays in your favor. Always in your favor. Never in the favor of the law. Whereas the judgment is always in the favor of the law and not in your favor. That's the difference. So anyone who follows the law of judgment is doomed, ultimately. But when you follow a perfect living master and he has taken duty, he's outside the law. So whilst he still has to obey the law, he can play with it. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Still talking about death.
Okay.
How long does it take for the soul to leave the body upon death?
How long does it take?
Yeah.
It depends on the individual, the karma. Some have to suffer, meaning that they have a long drawn out death where the soul gradually withdraws from the extremities and gradually works its way up to the throat center, and then when it hits the heart center, then they are unable to move or communicate. When they're at the throat center, they can't speak at all, they can't connect with you, and when they reach the eye center, they die. So there's a gradual withdrawal. Now some people this happens very quickly. Always with satsangis, it's a fairly quick affair. With non-satsangis, non-initiates of a holy master, it varies. depending on how attached they are to their physical. So for example, let's say somebody has got to a point where they hardly relate to themselves physically. Why hang around in the body? Quick withdrawal. But if they are obsessed with their physical, their family, their connections, and no, I don't want to die, I haven't got come yet to go, oh, those ones have to drag on, and it's a painful experience for them. Yeah.
Will a person be aware that they're dying at that point?
No. They only get to a point where they realize when they reach the eye center. While they're dying, they're not aware. They've lost awareness, say, of parts of the physical body. They've lost some sensory awareness, but they still realize they're dying. Now, even when they cross the ice, even when they die and they're greeted by the Yamduts, first thing they tell them is, "You've died." They don't even know, because they just feel that they're in a dream state, because death is very similar to a dream. So the Yamduts have to prove to them that they've died. That's one of their roles. The officers of the court have to come and say, "You have died." And they allow them to look back for a moment to see the body dead, and that you're separate from the body. Therefore, this is your spirit form. Then they gradually get it, that they've died. But then the fear sets in, because depending on if the Yamduts are grotesque and ugly and horrible, because they know they're going to go to a worse place, then fear starts setting in. And if they're Yamduts, then they think, okay, let's see what happens next. But yeah, they have to be told, otherwise they won't know.
Wow.
Yes.
Why do some people suffer for such a long time before they actually passed away?
There are different reasons for that. One of them, that I mentioned earlier, is because they're so attached to the world, to the family, they don't want to leave. They're fighting tooth and nail to stay here. So in their mind, that's how they are. So they are feeling why, they're questioning, they're angry, they're upset inside. Why is this happening to you? All this is going on, even if they can't relate this to you because they're so sick. In their mind, they're going through this. So for such people, death is very tortuous. Others, let's say a believer, let's say a follower of Jesus who's very much in love with Jesus, very happy. They understand that when they die, they're going to go to heaven. That's how they see it. So for them, they just welcome death. So they die with a smile on their face. So that's why we see, even in a hospital setting, we see different types of death experience. Some die peacefully, many die not so peacefully, and some die horribly. They all die, that's one thing they have in common, but their individual experience depends on their state of mind at the time of death. That's why they say that life is a rehearsal to die. Because the manner of your death and the state of your death is dependent on how you lived your life, what mindset you got to at the time of death. Now somebody might outwardly be spiritual, let's say. They might pretending to be. They might go to the local church or to the temple, look like they're doing everything, but they have a horrible death. Then you must ask yourself, why is this the case? Actually, because they were a hypocrite, as Jesus called the hypocrites. They were pretending because they wanted some favor. They wanted to have a better life. They were doing it for some other reason other than a noble reason. And because it wasn't a noble reason, sometimes these people go through the same gruesome death as a non-believer. And then you think, why? Some people who are observers of that religion might say, well, how come this one, they really attended this temple every time, they did all their things apparently on the outside, but they harbored a lot of negativity and other things inside which they masked. And their motives were not wholesome in what they were doing. They wanted either recognition, maybe they're backbiting within the organization, or they're judgmental, or they're causing problems for others. They've caused so much problems within, using a noble organization like, say, a church or a temple, and within that stirring trouble and causing problems. Yeah? Or maybe even just harboring such things. Because like Jesus said, if you think of something but were unable to fulfill it, you have still committed that crime in the eyes of the Lord. Yeah? So, yeah.
Why do some pastors or ministers does not practice what they do preach?
Because it's a job for them. Sometimes they fall into something, first with faith. As they explore the contradictions, let's say, in a book like the Bible, there's many stories. You can find a story to support one view, and then the other view. You can find a story to support another view. Which one is right? So as a minister, as a pastor, you have more access to the Bible and you have a more critical, analytical view of it, let's say. So for some people, this is disturbing to them. They think, hold on a minute, what is the truth then? One passage says this, one passage has another account. This is a problem with Scripture. And so they say, well, we don't know. But we're in this job. It's a paid job. Like, for example, you look at the Archbishop of Canterbury, coronating the king. Yeah. If you speak to him on a private account, you may find that his views of his faith are very different to what he portrays. He's an intellectual, a scholar. So he looks at it from a scholarly point of view, and he has some doubts about, say, the virgin birth, the resurrection, physical resurrection. He has doubts. But yet he's the head of the Anglican Church. Because it's a job. And at least he's doing something positive, because even if it helps somebody, to get away from their miserable life by some momentary belief, why not? But for higher truth seekers, it's very different. They demand the truth. They don't want to have controversies or contradictions or misinformation. They say, I want to know the truth. And all human beings have a right to demand the truth, but they don't exercise this right. They don't actually ask the Lord and challenge the Lord, show me the absolute truth. I want the absolute truth, or do or die. They don't do that. They're scared because they think the ultimate Lord is the Lord of the Holy Books, which is a jealous God, a revengeful God. They believe that, a judgmental God. So they think, well, if I challenge the Lord of the Holy Books, the Scriptures, the ones written in the Abrahamic faiths, let's say, I'm going to get a retribution for this, a repercussion. He's going to strike me down. And they believe this because they're convinced by the book. They have faith. But the true Lord is only a forgiver. He doesn't judge. But they're appealing to the wrong type of Lord. They're appealing to the judgment Lord. And if you appeal to the judge, you have to face judgment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do most people at the time of death have many regrets about their life? Example, wishing they had done more spiritual practice.
I think, judging by what's been reported by most people, I said yes. Not so necessarily spiritual practice, mostly something physical they haven't done. They haven't gone there, they haven't sorted out a family member, they haven't made peace with their rival brother or sister or something, or mother. Yeah, I think most people die with regret.
Just going back, talking about the soul, and there's a question here. Does soul fragmentation exist? And is there a way to consolidate them into one body, or is it supposed to serve another purpose?
Not sure where this person is coming from with the question. I mean, if you look at the one soul, or the one super soul, or the supreme consciousness, which is the Lord Almighty, which has separated itself from itself into countless individuated souls, then you could say it's fragmented itself into individuals to have an individual experience, like we said before, to view creation from every infinite angle, and to play, have fun. This person, if this person is talking about a soul being fragmented as an individual, no, that doesn't happen. An individual soul doesn't get fragmented or doesn't get harmed in any way, no matter what part it's playing in creation. For example, even Hitler's soul was unharmed. It was an observer during the entirety of all that he was doing, his mind was doing. The mind tool that he had, his role karmically in this world, to do what he had to do, was assigned to the mind, not the soul. The soul was an observer of all this. And the soul even says, I did my job well. Because there's no reality to anything that's going on. It's all shadows on the wall, puppets, and so on. There's no reality. So from the soul's point of view, nothing is real except the soul. Because everything is a projection from the soul, including the mind tool that's used by the soul to have an experience in creation. If that's the case, where is the reality? Who's to judge? What are you going to judge? Are you going to judge the shadows on the wall when they have a punch-up? With a man moving his hands and the puppet, the shadows are fighting each other? And you go and hit the wall with a hammer? Say, why are you fighting? Stop it. That is the futility of it. From the soul's point of view. No reality to anything that's happening here. It's all projection.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions around meditation. Whenever I try to listen to the sound by closing my ears, I sometimes hear a constant high-frequency beep sound like a blank radio channel. It sounds like tinnitus, but I have never had it. Is it related to some bodily function, and is it a common occurrence while trying to listen to inner sounds?
Well, this is a question I get asked quite a lot about recognizing physical sounds from spiritual sounds. One of the easiest ways to recognize this is when you're not in meditation, if you're still hearing the sound in your ears and within your head, it's physical. When you go into a meditative state, different type of waves occur, brain waves occur. We go into something called a theta state. And the theta brain waves are largely sensory deprived, so they're not involving the physical senses when you get to that point. Now, any sound you hear in that state is spiritual. So if the sound comes and goes, so for example, let's say when you meditate, the sound comes sometimes and it doesn't other times, then it's spiritual. If the sound is always there, lingering in the background, whether you really are focused in meditation or not, then it's likely to be biological or physical.
Okay, so you could be in a meditative state and hear a tinnitus sound, but if you don't hear it other than that, it is what it is if it sounds like that.
Even if it sounds like tinnitus, it's a spiritual sound, because it's not generated physically, because when you're in the physical consciousness, if you're fully alert physically, you don't hear the sound.
Yeah, okay. And the last question regarding meditation. Why is contemplation on the master of high truth a higher form of meditation?
Because as a lover of truth and a devotee of the truth, you would be that 24/7. Now, you cannot meditate 24/7, but you can contemplate 24/7. You can have that awareness 24/7. So naturally, meditation leads to contemplation. So this higher form of contemplation, where you're constantly in tune with the Master day or night, whether you're meditating or not, is the state of the saints or the enlightened ones. They don't need to meditate because they've reached a point where they're 24 hours a day in perfect union with the Lord. We call this state of contemplation, where they're constantly interacting with the Lord, constantly in awareness, as a contemplation. So contemplation is higher. That's why Baba Savan Singh Ji, great master of Bias in India, but who passed away in the late 1940s, often used to say that meditation should be done 24/7. When he was asked how much meditation should we do, but then they rightly asked, well, but we can't meditate for 24 hours a day because we have families, we have responsibilities. He says, he says, I mean contemplation. So, yeah.
But if, imagine, like in this day and age, you're practicing this contemplation on the master. Imagine if you were to do it 24/7. Obviously, you go to sleep,
Yeah, even then.
Can you ever do anything to its fullest potential? It's like multitasking in a way, isn't it?
You are. Because how many times have you done that? How many times have you been thinking about the dinner you're going to cook whilst you are pruning the roses in the garden? Yeah? Okay. You could do more than one thing at a time. The mind is multifaceted. That means that you can contemplate all the time on the Lord. Whatever you're doing else, even if you're making love, you can thank the Lord for such a pleasure. You can be in constant tune. You've trained yourself to be in recognition of your other minds, other dimensions of mind, and you definitely, particularly higher mind, like spiritual mind, is always there. Is the overseer. We call this the wisdom mind. It's a mind of wisdom. And when that mind is empowered by constantly awakening it or trying to stimulate it through spiritual practice, then eventually it's always there in the background. No matter what you're doing, in the background, awareness of the spiritual state, connection with your master is always there. In fact, it's the opposite. You can't get rid of it.
Okay, can I slightly challenge you on that?
Okay, go on.
I'm just trying to be practical. I get what you're saying about, well, if you can multitask by pruning those leaves, but thinking about what you're
going to cook in the evening for the family,
then, because that's practical, like you're thinking about the dinner, because you think of the next step, what we're going to eat tonight.
Yeah.
then if there's so many things like that happen, how much space have you got for contemplation? If you're doing a task and thinking about your next task, where does contemplation fit in?
No, because you have many levels. Yes, you have many levels of mind. One overrides the other. So there's a trumping system going on. When you have spiritual mind awakening, it overrides. It's not that you have to fight for this. You shouldn't have to fight.
I know.
It's a natural... A person who practices spirituality constantly is in love and devoted to their master. It is a helplessness of the higher mind, the spiritual mind, to constantly revolve around this. It's not something you have to generate. You understand?
So, okay. So what you're saying is I haven't developed probably the skill of being able to do it. Because, and the reason why I ask is because there are times when I am doing my contemplation and I'm in flow and it feels right.
Even if it's forced, it's good.
But then I get this thing like, oh yeah, what am I going to cook tonight? I've got to get the potatoes.
That's because you're intellectualizing at the moment. You're at the level of the intellect, you're at the level of the emotions. You're not yet at that spiritually evolved state where it happens automatically without you having to generate. You have to understand the automatic state of the mind to be constantly aware. For example, you take your breathing for granted. You take your body for granted. But you're constantly aware that the body is functioning.
Yeah.
It's always there. In everything you do, you're aware of it. But you're not in a sensory state where you're dominating. It's not dominating.
But the difference there is that I'm not having to think about breathing because there's an automatic...
The same thing happens in spirituality. I said the spiritual mind is automatic. It's not a thinking. It's automated. Once it's awakened, it happens regardless.
So that's the thing. It hasn't been awakened for it to happen automatically.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
It's a spiritual state. Therefore, it's automatic.
So I guess what you're saying is I'm at that stage of having to force it.
Yeah, you're forcing it, but at least you're training it. Because even by forcing it, you're empowering. Yeah. Anything you do to empower your higher consciousness, your spiritual mind, is good. Eventually, it'll become empowered. Imagine you're charging a battery. So before the battery can light the bulb, right, it has to have a certain amount of power. When you first plug it in, nothing happens. It's not enough power. But once it gets to a certain point, the light comes on. Sure. That's exactly what happens with spiritual practice. Okay. First, you empower the spiritual mind, then it becomes your friend. So whereas the mind before was your enemy, distracting you, spiritual mind is on your side. You make it your friend, then your spiritual mind goes with the soul quite happily to higher realms. So the only way to get there is more practice. Just keep doing it until... That's why, particularly Babaji is on this bad. Everything he says, keep on doing meditation, keep on practicing, more practice, more... That's all he ever seems to say. The reason he says that is because it's true. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
You know, there's a lot of... what you call them new age speakers now on YouTube and stuff. You say that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to chase. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to.
If you have that written in you, you can do that. But believe me, if it's written for you to go and run after that particular job, you'll do so. If it's in your script. You see, these people are talking as if they're empowered to make the choice. They do not understand that they have no free will. So when you have imaginary free will, you can imagine all sorts of things. I can tell you have a choice to go here or there. Do you really? Circumstances and conditions will determine your choice. Yeah? So, but they do not know this. These are philosophers, they're intellectual game players. These are people who think a little bit and take one end of the stick and think that's it, the entirety of the stick.
Wouldn't it make sense for masters to tell you not to get so involved?
Not to get so involved in what?
Creation.
That's the idea of spirituality, to teach you that this is not your true home. So why get involved with it? Why not just enjoy it? Why not just go along with it? That's why I always say, live in the Lord's will. Go with the flow.
What I'm saying is, like, try and avoid interaction.
As much as possible. Yes.
With others.
As much as possible. Where something's instigated by you. If it's instigated by them, you have no choice. You have to interact. It's your karma. But when you have a choice, let's say part of this is some free will choice, not a free will, but a choice you make. Again, conditioned. then you have two choices to make, to interact or not interact with this one. Because the thought has come to your mind, I want to phone this friend. Yeah, I want to speak to him. It just come to your mind. Why should you? What benefit is there in it? Actually, it may open up a whole interaction where they may tell you their problems, you get sucked into this, or you might hear, why bother with all that? If you're at peace, you don't need external pleasures.
Yeah, so once you're initiated, then every other interaction other than that with your master, it doesn't lead to anything spiritual, does it?
No, because the master works through the creation as well. You can't say that. For example, let's say you're doing seva, you're doing some work for the master. You're not interacting with the master, but you're doing something helping others. That's still part of the master's work. Let's say you help your mother, your brother, your sister in the Lord's name. That is still doing the master's work. So you are interacting constantly with master when you're in tune. The thing is to get in tune with that, where the master is there everywhere you go. In fact, you can get to the point where you're driving your car and your eyes physically see the master sitting next to you. It's not real, but the master manifests through the senses. So into it are you that you actually see him and can have a conversation with the master sitting to the car. Another person sees you having a conversation with nothing. But you actually see the manifestation of the master. You can make the master physically manifest even.
Are you manifesting the master as a master actually manifesting himself or herself?
You can play the game of intellectual gymnastics with the whole thing. Generally, it's in your destiny that you are going to be this way, and therefore when you think at a certain intensity, the master manifests. Now you can say, well, you're the master manifesting a copy of yourself as the master, or you can say the master is responding to your pleas. Look at it any way you like. But the fact is that you are enjoying an experience in a pleasurable way that is beneficial to you. And this objective of becoming one with the master ultimately, because after all, the master does manifest from your soul. So they talk about merging with the master before you merge with the Lord. Why is this the case? Because the master is none other than your higher self from the soul. So why wouldn't you want to be attached to that? It's wisdom. It's your own wisdom. It's in your favor. How can your soul manifest something that is not in your favor? It's always in your favor.
Is that the same for when you see the master in your dream?
Yes. Any imaginary or any concept of seeing or hearing of the master is always of the soul. It's always manifested.
So that couldn't be a trick of your mind when you see the master in your dream?
Oh, that's different. Yes, you can. You can, the mind itself can generate a form of the master. It's perfectly possible. But if you are constantly doing the repetition, this is why masters have given you the 5 holy names. And if you recite those 5 holy powers constantly, all the time in the back of your mind, what will happen is even when you go to sleep, you'll find that you are actually reciting that. Your higher mind is reciting it. Then when you have a dream, it's real. But for others, it could be imagination. Let's say they've just listened to a satsang and everything, they've got really excited, and they have some strange imagery of the master within. It's still good, because it's still confirming, or affirming rather, what they've just heard. But it's not real. But it doesn't matter. Just enjoy any experience of the master within. Don't try to analyze it. Yeah? Later on, as you progress spiritually, things become more clearer for you. But I would say anything in a positive direction, any positive experience, just enjoy it. Don't analyze. Just enjoy. No harm. Yeah. Okay.
Right, I've got a question about dreams.
Okay. Yes.
Talking of dreams. On some occasions while sleeping, I remember very faintly that I had dreams involving my master. Although I tried hard to remember the events, conversations, etc., I forgot most of it. Could it be some form of mind trick, or do these experiences occur in a disciple's journey?
I think I'll just explain that, but to elaborate a little bit further for a disciple, it really depends on the state of the disciple, what level of spiritual merit they have, which will determine the level of their experience. sometimes, particularly when they're not really thinking about their master or doing anything, and the master appears, this is always genuine. Because it's the master's grace. They've got the merit, the master appears to them. They may or may not remember, depending on the focusing ability, because if they're not a focusing type person, a detailed person in life, then even in the mindset when they have an experience of a dream, they won't remember easily. They're not trained. Whereas somebody who's, let's say, a scientist, highly trained to notice a slight data change and a whole row of number, for them, they'll have a very clear recollection. So the recollection you have depends on your focusing ability as a human being in the physical state. It gives you a clue. So it's always good to see the master in any form, I would say. Don't worry about it being a trick of the mind. If the master manifests in any form, just enjoy it. It's always good. It'll never be a bad experience, even if it's a trick. I'll tell you that much.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions around Christianity. Can you explain the Holy Trinity of Christianity?
Yes. The concept of Christianity and the Trinity comes way back from ancient Sumerian times, where they had their own Trinity. And Christianity borrowed this concept. Similarly, it's recognized in Hinduism with the Trinity of the Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. So the concept of Trinity itself as a concept pre-existed before Christianity. However, the Christian concept of the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost is actually representative of fact, in the sense that you have the Lord Almighty at the helm of everything. You have the manifestation of the servant of the Lord, the Master, or in this case Jesus. And then you have the spiritual form of that being called the Holy Ghost. So that's why Jesus, referred to the Holy Ghost as the one you should get in touch with. He never said get in touch with me physically. He said get in touch with the Holy Ghost. He's referring to the spiritual form of the Master. So this is perfectly in line with spiritual teachings around the world in different forms.
Actually, the next question, and I think you've already answered it, can you explain what is meant by the Holy Ghost in Christianity? But you have.
Yeah, it's a spiritual form of the Master.
Right, I've got a few questions around the path. Should we ever try to convince our family members about the path if they are non-believers or follow a different path?
No. Each one of us is individual. The fact that we are collectively associated with each other for a temporary period doesn't mean that you have a right to impose anything upon anyone. If you really care or concern about the family members, then be the perfect example. By being the perfect example, then they will recognize this within you and they will themselves ask. There's a difference between teaching and preaching. Preaching is when you force your attention upon it. You're like a missionary, yeah? You go out there to convert people. That's preaching. That never works. Never ends happily. But teacher is different. Somebody comes and asks you, please teach me this thing. I said, okay. Because you've asked, I'm able to do so. Again, this is living the Lord's will, if you like. Not instigating, but reacting. And in this case, so be the example. And as the example, then the family member might come up to you and say, what's your secret? We've been through this very family distressful event and you've just been okay. You've been quite centered, focused, balanced, happy. What's your secret? Then you tell them. And then if they develop that further, they think, oh, this is something I would like to know more about or I can do, then they will ask questions. And as they ask, you answer. But never try to convert anybody.
Talking of preaching, when you, may go to the town centre and you do see you'll see a table and a microphone and they'll be talking about God and maybe raising their voice a little bit.
Yeah.
Those people, they must have a real, obviously it's written into their destiny and all the rest of it, but they must have a pull to do that because it could be raining, it could be cold. And then I'm walking past them and I'm thinking, wow, you guys are good.
You know, it's like with anything, people have a passion for things, whether it's to be an Olympic swimmer, whether it's to win something at all costs. Yeah, people, when they have a passion about something, they exercise that passion. So when these people have a passion of something, they believe it's right. They're not doing it from a wrong, bad point of view. They're not bad people. It's just they don't understand that that's not the way, the best way. So they do with what they can, what they understand. So it's okay, it's no harm to anybody what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I just feel that I couldn't do that. I'm not as
because
brave.
it's not in your destiny.
Yeah.
But believe me, if it was written for you to go out there, you'll be doing it.
Yeah, true.
You'll be championing them.
True. Okay, next question regarding the path. How should we deal with people who think this path of Sant is a cult?
I think anything that's not mainstream is a cult in most people's eyes. Because they can't do it, or they don't want to do it, or often it challenges their sensibilities, it makes them feel guilty. Many reasons why somebody may find something's a cult. Somebody might be in a very negative state, and therefore even something good. Like at the time when Jesus was preaching, you have to understand that Judaism was a dominant force at that time. Jesus comes along and says, forget all this, right? Yes, Judaism is there, but now I've come to save you as a Messiah. And they said, what do you mean you're the Messiah? According to the scripture, a Messiah in Judaism has certain qualities. Yeah, there are 12 qualities of a Messiah that have to pass in Judaism before somebody be classed as a Messiah, which is one of the reasons why they rejected Jesus. He didn't fit into that category, but he proclaimed himself the Messiah, or the others said he was a Messiah. So what happened then? It's just a question of understanding and understanding the viewpoint of where the society you're in comes from. So if you say something that's contradictory to mainstream point of view, then they're going to say one of two things. Either you're a madman or you're trying to start a cult, if they're negative. If they're not negative-minded, and they're positive-minded, or they're curious, or they're seekers, they'll say, let me listen. What he says makes sense. Yeah, I'm interested. It appeals to me. So why does it appeal to one and not to the other? So the one it appeals to, he says, oh, this man is great. He's a spiritual teacher. He's a noble teacher. And the other man down the road says, no, this is just a cult. I don't believe in anything because I'm in a negative, miserable state. The world is damned. I am damned. Everything is damned. Everything is bad. Yeah, they live in damnation. Yeah, they damn and blame everything. We see enough of that in the news. Any negative thing, straight away the damners and the blamers come in. The judges come in, blah, blah, blah. But they're the biggest hypocrites. Because when they make a mistake, then they want to be forgiven. But when others make a mistake, they're damned. So Jesus called these people the hypocrites in the Bible, which is where we get the word hypocrites from. So it's an interesting idea that to one person it's a cult, to another person it's a holy, beneficial experience. So that's the way of the world. That's the world we live in. It's fun.
Because I guess from my perspective, when I think of cult, it's something that you get involved with, and it's like you can't leave. But with something like Sant, you're free to.
But they don't know. You see, you're right. Actually, there's a definition of cult. One of them is you have to have a charismatic leader that you have to surrender all your wealth, your possessions, and everything to, and they take control of your life. That's why people who have organizations where there is a leader involved can be considered a cult. But it requires all the elements to be fulfilled. The second thing is that once you join, you cannot leave. Yeah. The third thing is that that you have to surrender all your wealth, your privilege, and you have to pay for, or there's some monetary involvement, let's say, monetary or some asset involvement in this. So these are the three main reasons of describing something as a cult, according to the dictionary definition. So Sant, apart from having a charismatic leader, but his charismatic leader doesn't demand to be obeyed or worshipped at any cost. He just gives teachings. So he doesn't fulfill the entirety role of a charismatic leader demanding obedience. Second thing is, he certainly does not require your wealth, your assets, or anything like that to be given. Everything is given on donation only. There's no requirement. Or even to do servant work. There's no requirement to offer your body or your wealth to the service of the community. It is an option. Yeah? And the third thing is, and important thing, you can leave any time without repercussion. There's no consequence to leaving.
You're not held against your will or anything
Yeah,
like that.
but they call this apostate in religion. Now, so therefore, actually religions follow into the cult thing more than the Santma, because they have a demand to be obeyed. The Lord of the Abrahamic faith says, worship me or else. There's a consequence. Yeah, that's pretty much a cultish leader, yeah? The second thing is, they say, here, you go to this, he said, you're expected to do work. You're expected to take part in some sort of activity for the church or for the congregation. You're expected to fulfill your role, to be a good little member. Although it's done very subtly, there's an element of expectation that you have to, if you don't do it, you look frowned upon. It's done very passively, passive aggression. But if they've requested you to do something, you turn it down. Well, you're not really one of us then, and you'll be vilified and a little bit condescended upon by the congregation. So it's very. And if you leave, you're considered a heretic. Yeah. So, in a way, mainstream religions follow the cult status much more. But it's funny how they don't see themselves as that. If they use their same measure that they judge others with to judge themselves, then they find actually they fit more that category.
It's like a socially accepted cult.
Yeah,
that way.
because it's socially accepted. That's it. It's mainstream. It's acceptable. Therefore, we can't call it a cult now because too many people follow it. We don't want to offend so many billion people because they'll come down on us like a ton of bricks. That's all it is. So I guess when you get a greater number and you become mainstream long enough, then even no matter how crazy your practices are, you're no longer a cult.
Thank you. Right, I've got a couple of questions regarding extraterrestrials.
Okay.
Do perfect living masters communicate with any of the extraterrestrials or beings outside of Earth?
Yes, it does happen. In fact, when an enlightened one or a master appears here on Earth, some of the aliens who live in this universe with us, share this universe with us, are really in tune to higher consciousness states, and they can pick up, even across the entire universe, a higher conscious being. Because consciousness does not travel in time. Consciousness is instantaneous. This is something that science hasn't discovered yet, the energy of consciousness, which is the actual origin of this universe. One who's in tune with that consciousness, let's say you're a very advanced alien, and you have mastered tuning into the consciousness of the universe at this level, then certainly when there is a higher conscious awareness present, they gravitate towards it. And they want to have higher knowledge. So there are some groups of aliens, humanoid type aliens, who definitely come into the company of the masters spiritually by telepathy. They communicate by telepathy, not necessarily physically, although physically they can come. And they want to request that higher knowledge of that master, from that master, because they've attained a certain level and they want more. They're going to the next stage. And this person, the Holy Master, represents something higher. So definitely yes, masters quite regularly are in communication with advanced aliens who have a very spiritual agenda.
Thank you. Last question regarding extraterrestrials. It is said that human beings were star-seeded by advanced humanoid extraterrestrials. If so, then do these beings have any authority over us now?
This is a whole different subject, but yes, it's true. Our physical form of a modern human, anatomically modern human, did not originate here on Earth as evolution, Darwinism dictates. We are quite separate from any other species here. There's many, many contradictions to the human form that doesn't follow the line of other animals here. We are quite different. We're the only ones, though, advanced, who cannot survive naturally without tools and shelter and elements to support us. we are not adapted physically to survive the earth as a physical being, relying only on what is around us. It doesn't work for us. And even the weather works against us. We need clothing, for example. We're the only animal that needs clothes.
Because you're supposed to evolve, but if like you're saying,
you're going backwards.
Things,
we're supposed to be more superhuman.
We're dependent.
According to Darwinian theories, that the more advanced a life form, the more capable it is. But we've gone down somehow the evolutionary scale. We're much more fragile than many of the animals, even the hominids, like Neanderthals, who are descended from the apes, the ape-like. They are actually survivors. They were able to survive without any of these things. Sure, they used tools and things to help them better, but they could eat raw food. They could eat food as it is. They didn't have to cook. They didn't have to farm, and they didn't have to wear clothing. They simply moved to a location where they didn't need clothing. They had hair on their body, and many other things. They didn't get sunburned. They didn't continuously grow their nails forever or their hair. That becomes an evolutionary problem.
Are you relating to that? You know that picture that you see where you got the ape and then it goes gradually and then it goes.
That's a Darwinian thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply directly because there's many intermediaries. There's many intermediaries. No, but the Neanderthal, nobody knows what a Neanderthal looks like.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the Denisovans and the Neanderthals were hairy.
Right. Okay.
So they had natural protection. And they are not considered to be the ancestors of human beings. They're a different line. So Homo sapiens are considered to have developed through the Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, one and so on. They took a different route, where the Neanderthals and the Denisovans took another route. There are many variations of the hominin trees, not so clear-cut, not linear as they portray, which is what you're talking about as symbolism from the ape to the human being. That's because at that time, during Darwin's time, that's what they thought it was linear, because they didn't have all the fossil record. They didn't have all the evidence to demonstrate there was multiple lineages going on here. One of them ended up as a human being, Homo sapiens. But actually, the Homo sapien is unlike any of the former hominids. It's much more fragile, smaller, much more delicate, much more unable to survive in this climate, in this weather. Yeah, if you put a human naked outside in the elements, it won't survive long. I guarantee it won't survive very long. But you put an animal, a goat, a deer, a rabbit, you'll be surprised it survives.
So, just to give me an idea, imagine I'm in a conversation with someone and they're talking about the Darwinian theory, but I want to refute that and say, actually, no. On a very base level, what could I tell them?
Firstly, that we're not able to survive as well as our former ancestors, the hominids that we're supposed to originate from, or even the apes. Whilst the only thing we have is intelligence that they do not have. Physically, we're a wreck. We have more genetic abnormalities than any other species on this planet. There are 4,000 genetic abnormalities compared to a few hundred in animals. Similarly, we cannot survive naturally in the elements without the aid of tools, shelter, clothing, cooking, and all other things which no other animal has to do to survive. Yeah.
So how?
Thirdly, our hair grows continuously, our nails grow continuously, which become a barrier to our survival. Without having to physically cut the nails. No other animals you have to cut their nails to survive. They survive. Now, if you can't pick up your food or eat with your hands because your nails are continuously growing, this is a genetic malfunction. Your hair gets in the way, it gets trapped in everything because it just keeps on growing, right, without having to cut it. This is a genetic malfunction. If you go into the sun, you get sunburned, damaged. No other animal. These are genetic malfunctions. Yeah.
So if they go back to that picture where you got the ape and you got man, and then they say that is Darwin's theory. Yeah,
but that's even now geneticists don't follow that. You won't find any genetic school using that image anymore. It's outdated because they know that the hominid evolution is not linear. It branches out. So therefore, that's no longer, nobody really credible uses that. It's mostly media or non-scientific establishment, but not even science recognizes that anymore, that that's the truth. You would never get a credible evolutionist coming here and actually, they would shun that one and say, no, get rid of that, because that's not the truth. Because they've found so many contradictions in the fossil record, so clearly that's not the way to go. You know, the hominids seem to have developed in Indonesia separately to, we have then in the Siberian area, the Middle East and Africa. So even the out of Africa theory now is questioned. The idea that they started in Africa, which came from the Richard Leakey and wife, who they discovered the fossils in back in the 60s. And they said, oh, these are the early humans, and this is where it all started, from the cradle of Africa and so on. But now, since then, many fossils have been found. For example, in Morocco, there's a 300,000-year-old human-like specimen, which predates anything found in the East Africa, the Rift Valley of East Africa. So where did humans originate?
Still
That's
Africa.
the question.
Still Africa, though, wasn't it?
Yes, but the very north.
Yeah, I know.
But then if you go to the Middle East, you have a different circumstance. The outer African theory says that we went out about 60, 70, 80,000 years ago, but there are 120,000-year-old skeletons in Israel. So what about that? You know, Aborigines are said to be around for 80,000 years. So that, how did they get from Africa to, I mean, if they had no boats and no means of travel other than walking, how did they get to Australia? So that the whole idea now has been turned on its head. It's a big, big question. Yeah. In the out of Africa theory, yes, some hominid at some point left Africa, but whether that's the source of all humanity, that's a problem. That's a problem that science has right now, among many other problems with the evolutionary theory, including the Cambrian explosion, where all the major phyla suddenly occurred 540 million years ago from simple single-celled or simple multicellular animals. Suddenly you have all the main phyla, animal kingdoms that we have today, all occurred simultaneously, not linearly, according to Darwinian theory. So there's a big problem. So when you want to really upset an evolutionist, just tell them the Cambrian explosion. Then they go running. They stump their feet in anger and say, why do you have to mention such a horrible word to us? We don't want to know about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The rest of the questions, there are about 10, are all random, so they'll probably take us all over the place. First one is, are the 5G towers a real threat to our health or even to our third eye?
They're definitely no threat to the third eye, because the third eye is a spiritual entity that crosses the physical barrier. Are they a threat physically? Yes, if you get close enough. They do emit a higher radiation.
When you say
power.
close, how close?
Well, science has determined that, but pretty close, you know. But to say that the devices that we pick up 5G is interfering, yes, it is. Electricity itself, the EMF emitted by electricity, UN has dictated that it should be no more than 1 milligauss for 3 feet of effect. If you sleep on your electric blanket while it's switched on, you're getting far more than that. That is causing you more harm than the radiation coming in from the some tower, the 5G tower. So electricity or electromagnetic radiation does affect you. It does cause harm in every way. The difference is it sufficient to cause humanity to abandon that technology? That's the question. And that's where there's little evidence to support that it causes, other than somebody living directly under the tower or in its line directly in a short distance, a few hundred meters. It's very difficult to say that, yes, the 5G, and the 5G is not the end. It's going to keep on going. After 5G, then there'll be the 6G network, then the 7G. Yeah, and when it gets to the 7G, then things get interesting. But that's a future technology. Wait for that. So I don't think anybody should really worry about the 5G, but generally speaking, I would say keep away from as much electrical instruments as possible. Don't keep them very close to you, whether it's your computer right close to you or your TV or any electrical device that generates an electric field does interfere with you in some way or another. Even your phone.
Yeah.
That's why, you should keep the phone at a certain distance. Maybe use speaker more, not have it so close to you for a long time. Because they all emit radiation. And the level of radiation, it hasn't been determined yet. What level of radiation is harmful? It's an unknown thing. It's a new technology. We have to wait some time. But all radiation harms you.
Yeah.
But obviously, the more powerful it is, the more harmful it is.
Thank you. Is it okay to do a 10-day Buddhist Vipassana meditation retreat? During the retreat, they advise not to practice other practices like repeating the 5 holy names. Are we still allowed to do this at the course?
There's no problem, no harm in this. There's no harm in following. I would only say that out of curiosity, some people want to investigate what other systems have to offer. No problem at all. From a satsangi point of view, from an initiate though, of a perfect living master, if they get too involved in these practices, it will take them away from their higher practice of Shuddha Shabd Yoga. That practice is superior to all practices. Therefore, if they embark on anything else consistently, then they are taking time away from what they should be doing. Not that it's harmful to them, not that it's wrong in any way, something that's evil or negative, no. But if it takes you away from what you should be doing, then why bother with it? Why not go to the very top? If you have something that's high and noble, why do you want to attain something lesser?
I guess this person's got to ask themselves, why are they?
But some people, they want to experience, like look at Ishwarji himself. He had to, go to he became initiated by 8 different religious systems, investigating to find out for himself what they had to offer. So he had to actually personally go through it all before he came back to Satgurus and said, no, this is the real deal. No harm if you are on a spiritual journey, because if you're a sincere seeker and you're just investigating things, the master always protects you.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to wander too far. Don't worry.
Yeah. And I guess for this person, if they're initiate, chances are they probably want to, I'm just guessing, they may want to go on something like this because they feel they're going to be around like-minded people.
Yes, but it's a different system.
Yeah.
It's a very mindfulness practice. Vipassana meditation is about focusing on the mind and feeling the sensations of the body. So the idea is to start with the top of your head and start feeling sensations of the skin against the air and the elements. And it's all about getting in tune with your body physically, not leaving the body.
Yeah.
It's not really a high spiritual practice. It's about mastery over the elements of the mind and your connection with the environment around you. And it's okay. It's not a bad thing to do from a non-initiate point of view. For an ordinary person, it's much better than just watching something at the movies.
True.
Yeah. So I think it's perfectly fine. They all have their place in society for the appropriate people. But I would say that for an initiate, why bother?
Yeah. Interesting. But then, if it's written into their script...
Of course. But the questioner asked me, so I'm telling them the truth.
I know.
Whether they're able to do it or not.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Is it true that some people who have a difficult relationship or marriage have often been enemies in the past? If so, are they placed together to simply pay off karmas?
Absolutely so, yeah. In fact, both Babaji and Ishwarji have often talked about this. Yes, if you are in a difficult relationship with a partner or even with a friend, they were your enemies and you have to make peace in this lifetime, because the law of karma determines that everything should eventually return to harmony. In order to get everything back to harmony, anything that you have upset, offended, you have to redress in one lifetime or another.
But supposing you had difficulties in that relationship and they really did you bad, like abuse on all levels, are you saying you have to make...
One has to forgive and the other one has to tolerate.
Okay.
So this getting together is all a settlement of karmic account. No two people get together without karma being involved. It's no random, it's not their choice. They're put together to settle something or to work together. So there's different types of relationships. But when people are arguing constantly and bickering and fighting each other, they were enemies. And they have to make peace now in this lifetime. So the whole story behind the relationships of human beings is an interesting one, because there is a plan. There is some sort of structure. Like I said, nothing can happen in disorder. The universe is perfectly ordered, and so is karma. Karma is perfectly ordered to lead you from one point to another. You have to go from A to B. And along that way, you have to encounter certain things to get there. That's written for you, because you have to have those experiences that add to your sanskars. So your sanskars are developing from lifetime after lifetime, according to the experiences you have previously. So the whole point of it all is that it's leading you from one state of awareness, or your state of being, to a higher state eventually, even for people not on the spiritual path.
So what about when people are in a relationship and they're not like at each other's throats, but somehow it naturally goes to an end?
They may be friends, or they may be associates, or somebody had their unfinished business with. They really had feelings for each other in the past, therefore they're connected now. And they see that through to the end. And it might be amicable, it could be peaceful.
Because there are those.
And it's not passionate, it's just simple, it's going with the flow, they're like good friends.
Yeah.
This is fine. It's because of their past that they're just completing that journey now, or working together. Sometimes they promise each other, help each other, so they work together.
Okay. Thank you. If we experience a lot of coincidences, is this due to our spiritual merit?
Yes, generally speaking, it's not only confined to spiritual practitioners, coincidences, it's also anyone. The Lord doesn't distinguish generally between initiates and non-initiates in a helpful sense, but the type of coincidences and the level of awareness for those ones who are in tune with the higher truth definitely is different to a worldly person who may also have a coincidence to drive them a certain way, because karma is such that it leads them to position after position after position along the timeline of events. How would they move along that timeline of events? They have to be led by something. So coincidences are there as well for them. The difference is those types of coincidences are not spiritually elevating. They're karma fulfilling. Whereas the coincidences that occur for a spiritual person usually have some sort of spiritual element to it.
Thank you. What practical tips can you give to calm us down if something makes us angry?
You know, again, we're speaking about sanskars. People have different mental states that they bring with them into this life, into their character. So it's not, there's no quick fix for just saying stop anger. You know, that happens at the astral realm. But in the meantime, if you're aware of this and you don't like it, then you put measures in place from practical things. The easiest thing is to walk away from a situation. If you walk away from the fire, you're not going to get burnt. Yeah? So walk away, that's the first thing. If you can't walk away, distract yourself. Think of something else, let it pass like the wind. Think of it like the wind. But that requires a certain strength of mind. Don't get involved. If you don't like being angry, don't get involved. Start practicing a detachment from it. Start trying to break away from it by distracting yourself with something else. But certainly the easiest way is to walk away. Then the second one is philosophy. If you have a very strong philosophy, let's say you're a Christian, and you're really into the Jesus' mode of living, then would you really express anger? Because your belief system kicks in and it stops you. So even if you initially feel anger, you curtail it, you curb it by the fact that your philosophy kicks in and says no. You're still forcing yourself not to do it, but still the outcome is good. Yeah. And so again, having a philosophy, if you're a spiritual practitioner, it's obvious. Why are you getting angry? You should know better.
Yeah.
Because you have that high spiritual truth. So you should remind yourself again. So constantly again, looking at noble people, hanging around with noble people helps you. Because the company you keep affects you. So if you're constantly surrounded by angry people and you're constantly aware of them, then that's going to affect on you.
Okay, thank you. Can we actually speed up time? Sorry, I'll say that again. Can we actually speed up the time we do things and get things done? Or is everything happening at exactly the time that it is scripted?
That's correct. Everything's happening at the time it's scripted. You might think you are speeding things up, but you can't. You can't change the course of events that's written. The script has been laid. The course of events will happen in a timely manner, from timeline to timeline.
Okay. Should we always be thankful for everything that comes our way, even if we find ourselves in a difficult situation?
Yes. It depends from the point of view, whether you're a negative person or a positive person. If you're embarking already in some spiritual practice or even a religion, you should always look at everything positively, because you're there to learn. It's a win or learn. So if you're not winning, you're learning. That's how you should look at it. But if you're looking at it from a negative perspective, then you'll just get angry. That thing's not going away. Yes.
Is it possible to jump from one script to another, like midway through the
No. No. The entire script of your life, every moment has been written, and you're merely following it. So do the best you can with this script.
You can't request another script.
No, you can't, because you'll have to die and then be reborn. So whilst you're in this lifetime, you have to make the best of what you've been given. But remember, this script has been agreed by you already. It's already part of your journey. So people who complain about their script is because they don't understand that they're the ones who are involved in this play. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what the script is. Rise above it. Whether your script is good and you become a hero in society, or whether you become a chief villain, if you can rise above the script and get to know the real you, the truth you, then it doesn't matter what the script is saying, because it doesn't hold you back. Yeah, it doesn't hold you back. The masters forgive. Anything you do in the master's name with a noble heart is forgiven.
Can you ask for an early end to this script?
You can ask, but if you have a place, a notional life, you have to go through your notional life, you can't end. No. The best way is living the now, rather than worrying about these things. This is the problem with the mind. The mind dwells on things. It dwells on the past. It worries about the future. If you get away from all of that and you live in the now, there's no time for you to even think of such things, because you're just busy enjoying the now. You don't worry about the script. You just make the best of what you have now in the right way. So you have the philosophy that tells you how you should behave right now. You have the understanding, you have the wherewithal to follow it. Why not just live in the now? You'll find it's a much happier experience than worrying about the script. That's why Master says, live in the now. Live in the Lord's will. Then what does it matter what the script is? If you're living in the Lord's will, the Lord will make it good. Yeah, even a bad thing will not affect you so much. Yeah, that's the experience of enlightened ones, or the ones who live in the Lord's will. Certainly my experience.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've got one last question now. How can we find true happiness in this world? Is it correct that it comes when we realise our true selves?
That's right. Happiness is removing your place from ignorance to enlightenment, wisdom. So happiness has to be accompanied by awareness, higher awareness. So higher awareness means that you are able to understand things more correctly. You understand what's going on around you, and therefore why are you going to be unhappy? If you are in full understanding of the creation and everything in it and how it's operating, how can you be unhappy? Instead of being unhappy, you become awestruck. It becomes a wonder to enjoy. Wow, look at this. Even the bad things going on, you think, wow, look how well executed it is. And look how everybody's running to it or running away from it. You know, wow, look at all these things going on. I'm a spectator looking at this.
It's kind of easier said than done, because as human beings, we're very much either focusing on the past, what I didn't do or I should have done,
Yes.
or you're thinking of what potentially is going to happen.
It's only because you lack knowledge. That's why Krishna said knowledge is power.
Yeah.
If you have the botheration in you to seek answers to these mysteries, you'll acquire knowledge. That knowledge will satisfy the intellectual mind first, which will overpower the emotional mind. Because remember, the intellect is higher. It's the bridge between the emotional mind and spiritual mind. So all these things are designed to get the bridge working, to connect you to the higher mind process. Now, the intellectual mind, once it's satisfied, is a logical mind. It will do logical things. So despite the fact that you'll think, well, what's the point then of doing this? Is a nonsense thing. So you'll hear people very logically expounding their philosophy, quite rightly so, that what's the point, there's no worth in doing this and this. They're right. They've got to that level of understanding. But if you do nothing and you just sit there and they say, I want to be happy, I just want to everything to go well, no, that's not going to happen. You're here because your life is a mixture of good and bad. Therefore, sometimes it's going to go okay, sometimes it's not. Even if you're a spiritual practitioner, I get so many questions about, well, I'm on this path now and I'm still suffering. I said, well, when did the Master ever tell you that your suffering will end? If that was the case, everybody will join the path because they want to end their suffering, not because they want truth. This is the path of truth realization. Therefore, it's got nothing to do with suffering or non-suffering. It's to do with you acquiring the truth, and the truth shall set you free, liberate you, get the hell out of here. Why do you want to make this world a paradise or make your life a paradise? Just get out, because your life is finite here. But you're the eternal, immortal soul. Why would you want to trade finite consequences, good and bad, for internal, infinite happiness and bliss? Why would you want to do that, even intellectually? So we have to come to that understanding through our exposure to higher knowledge. Knowledge is power. So by exposing yourself to right knowledge, that Krishna spoke about, the right knowledge, it makes you react rightly so, and therefore that generates happiness.
But if you're initiated, isn't your life going to be a little bit better than it would have been if you weren't?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because let's say you're really saying, I want to go home now, quickly, right? Then Master might accelerate your karma.
Then you'll experience certain things.
Then you experience much more suffering.
Yeah.
In fact, that's more common. So a lot of people say that once they got initiated, all hell broke loose. My life went upside down. Every calamity came before me, but I still don't want to leave it. Because there's a pull. Luckily, it's not to do with the intellect. Initiation has nothing to do with the mind, intellect. The pull comes from within. The Master pulls you at the same time as whipping you into shape. Yeah? It's all part of the fun. Now, if you take it very seriously, life seriously, and this whipping seriously, then yeah, you're the one to suffer. But if you have a different point of view, and you think, okay, I'm on the path now, I'm going home regardless. I don't care what condition I'm in. Yeah, whether the Master drags me or whether I jump along for the ride. I don't care, I'm going home. Whatever it is, let Master decide. But if you're able to do that, the Master says, okay, come on board now. You don't need to be whipped. Because you're not straying. You've given up. You're living the Lord's will. That's why I always say, live in the Lord's will, go with the flow, test it out for yourself. This is a living faith, not a blind faith. Prove it to yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Just the fact that I live this way of life, yes, that's a testimony to it, but why not make it your testimony? There's nothing like having your own first-hand experience than listening to somebody else who's done it. Yeah.
You said earlier that the Master knows loopholes in the law, the system.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was given that as an expression, not in the literal sense of a loophole, okay?
Paying back the karma,
Yeah.
accelerating your karma, is there no loopholes there that you can put in place?
No, even that's determined in your script, actually. Yeah. It's, people, when they're making the speed of your spiritual progress is also predetermined. There's nothing you can do to speed it up or slow it down. It's actually as it is. That is why I say, go with the flow, enjoy the ride, make the best of it with your attitude. The only thing you have, which you could say is a measure of control, is your attitude to the whole thing. If you have a positive, really accepting and attitude of love and devotion and all the good, noble things, then this will see you through.
So when the Masters do all these satsangs and they encourage you to sit and meditate, they just play a game?
Yes, they play their role.
because they know you're going to do it. It's
That's right.
So
When it becomes a need in you, we are driven by need. When something becomes a need, then we're motivated to act. So for example, when you need to go to the toilet, you go. You don't just go for the sake of it. When you need to eat, you eat. Yeah?
Why can't the master just say in satsang that no progress when you're meant to progress?
Because you have to understand, okay, what I'm doing here by telling the truth is a unique event now in the 21st century. Historically, masters have always sheltered us from the harsh truth of everything because people were very emotionally minded in Kali Yuga. They were at a stage where they're in survival mode and all they wanted was a better life. Yeah, and if there's some better afterlife, good, that's a bonus. But most of them were seeking a better life. So masters operated, the knowledge they gave was within the karmic law. So they said, be good, do good, help others, then it'll come back to you, and all these kind of things. All about cause and effect. You know, judgment, retribution, all about that. That was the theme taught. Now that we're in the 21st century, since 2012 has started Dwapar Yuga, the message can change to be in line with the higher thinking of human beings here on earth. So now a higher truth is being taught to you. And that higher truth is what I'm explaining to you now. But we're in the very early stages of Dwapar Yuga. Most people in the world are not ready yet even for this. That's why it's going to take some 20 years for this to fully take off and become mainstream. Because there's going to be a lot more suffering in the world, a lot more tragedies, a lot more things going to make people question life and what it's all about and the way society should be run and so on. In order to transition us more on a spiritual direction, certain things have to happen. Humans learn by experience, by bitter experience, not by words alone. Fortunate are they who can listen to wisdom, adopt it as their own and live by it. Mostly they have to suffer. So wisdom, there's two hands. You need two hands to clap. Yeah? A bird needs two wings to fly. So on one hand we have wisdom that the masters give. On the other hand, slap, the suffering. When you stray away from wisdom, you suffer. So what happens is when you stray away from wisdom, then you look at the wisdom. Oh, the wisdom says this. I moved away. That's why I'm suffering. Now there's a connection. And if you build upon that connection, that will lead you to what you should do with your life, how you should live your life. Then you're in harmony with things. Then you're in harmony with yourself, you're in harmony with nature and so on. So that's how masters approach it. They look at it from both points of view. If they relied only on teachings, only on what they say, nobody will become a satsangi. Because words alone do not influence us enough. The only biggest influencer is suffering. So suffering is a blessing in disguise because it gives us the ability to change like nothing else can. It is the greatest of teachers, in fact. A master can give you a lecture for 10 hours solid and you'll walk away and you say, that was good, that was Zen, but you wouldn't act upon it. But then you go outside and the consequence happens of something you've done. Boom, you learn. Okay, I'm going to change now. So words alone cannot change you, but masters have to be a role model. They have to present the ideal. They have to know full well that the Sangha cannot follow it. But the master has another secret weapon, not just the wisdom of his words, but the slap and the reward system. So he makes use of karma. You see, masters not against karmic system. They see it as a valuable learning tool. Because if you do something so-called wrong and you get a slap, you're not going to do that again. Similarly, if you do something good, you're going to enjoy it, you're going to do it. Masters use this simple idea that we understand to direct us. That's why eventually, even Babaji says, this path is need-based. When you have the need to follow it, when you have the need to do so, you'll do it without me having to tell you. It becomes a need. We all have to fulfill our needs. We have no comment. Wants are optional. Wants are desires, they're optional. Needs are essential. Without the need for food, shelter, whatever, you die. So a need is a level that the master gives to you, a gift, that you need this. Therefore you do it. And if somebody says to you, why are you following this path? You say, oh, I don't know. I need to do it. It's a calling within me. Like in Christians, they call it as a calling. I've been called to do this. Why have they been called? Their neighbor hasn't. It's become a need in them because their time is up according to the timeline. That's it. Now they have to fish. That's why Jesus called himself a fisher of men. Yeah, because he fishes them out. He puts the bait, sends it out, and they have a need to bite that bait. So they took that. They had no idea that everything was orchestrated by the Lord. They thought they were making the decisions. They're not. So that's a beautiful thing about this. If you just let go and enjoy this life, at the same time, when it comes in you, because of your circumstance of life, to seek the truth, do it. Follow it through. Enjoy. If it's not your time, just go out there and play. Carry on until your time is up. When the time comes, by hook or by crook, you'll be put on this path. You have no say in this matter, actually. It's not in your hands, luckily. Because if it was in your hands, all kinds of things would happen, problems. So this is led by the Lord itself, which you had an agreement with. When your time is up, the Lord empowers the soul. The soul starts awakening. And what happens? Higher mind starts getting stimulated, because that's the closest thing to the soul. Higher mind is your wisdom mind. It starts seeking philosophy. You naturally start wanting to read philosophical books, like listening to religious talks, like listening to science even, or debate. You want to know the mysteries of the world. Why? It's not necessary for your survival, is it? This is just an addition to your problems of survival. But why should we have this? Because it's led from somewhere else. It's not led from a survival instinct. If we were just animals that biologists say, then we wouldn't bother with all these things. We wouldn't be sitting here having satsangs. We wouldn't be inquiring about God or nothing. Because it's not a survival need. Yeah? What makes humans different is that they operate outside a survival need. That's why when the Lord says he created man in his image, he's talking about the ability of man to search within himself and find the truth. This ability to go beyond the animal state. They're clearly an animal. They're clearly physical like the other animals. But they have a state of possible potential beyond the animal state, beyond the physical. So masters appeal to that. They generate that awareness within that person where they start thinking. And then they clap and say, well done for thinking. Oh, wow, you good boy. You come here. Come. Yeah, I give you now a merit. I give you grace. You've done really well. You know, you're inquiring on this path. All of it is the master's doing. Yeah, everything. You do nothing. Not even your effort is your own. That is the truth. But when the need comes in you through master's grace to make the effort to obtain a result, you have to do it within the law. The law of this land says you don't get something for nothing. You have to put some work in and you get a result. That's why they invented the meditation system. Because once you're initiated, why should you meditate? Why should you bother doing anything? But you live in a land of due and consequence. You can't escape. So you have to do something. So Master said, right, why not make use of this karma system to do something positive for yourself? So by meditating, you're doing something positive that's going to evolve you and get you out of here. But you're using the karmic system to do it. You see, the law, that's the loophole. You mentioned about loophole. The loophole is that the masters cleverly use the karmic system to get you out of here. And then once you're out of the karmic system, you don't have to bother about anything. Masters don't have to meditate. They're out of the system. But they give you instruction. Be good, don't eat meat, don't do this, don't do that. Why? Why are they telling you this? Because that's karmic law. They are upholding the law. So the first thing is they uphold the law, not banish it. Then they say to you, right, whilst you're upholding the law, using the system of the law, put an effort in. Meditate. As you meditate, your consciousness rises beyond the law. You go beyond the realm of the law because you exist beyond that. And once you're out of the law, do what you like. You're free, finally. That's the trick. That's the masters playing this game, of trying to get you out of the karmic system. So there's been a system devised we call Sant, which gives you a set of rules and regulations and guidelines that allow you to escape the system that you're in. Yeah? You could call it loophole if you want. Masters are masters of this. That's what we call them masters, because they've done it. They've escaped. And they use their example. And they say, look at me. I've come here, I can now help you how to do it. So that's why a wise one, one who's ready, who's somewhat awakened within, will listen to the masters, will listen to the wise words and follow it. And will say, okay, this, I want to escape too. I want to be free too. And now you no longer look at karma as something negative. You don't look at it as something bad. You see everything that happens to you as something to teach you, to direct you in a certain direction. Once you're an initiate of a perfect living master, karma has a more important role to play because it directs you in a certain direction, as well as simply paying your dues. But even then, when you're paying your dues, whatever your past is, it's not a random thing. It has an element of knowledge, gyan with it, wisdom. Embedded in that suffering is wisdom. If you have the wherewithal to recognize the wisdom in any suffering, then all suffering is good. In fact, there's a very famous incident at the time of a king in one of the states of India at the time during the Mughal rule in the medieval period. And this king, his name was Ibrahim, and he was a very great devotee of the Lord. And he, although Muslim born, he was a free thinker. You know, the need came into him to discover the truth. Okay, so there he is, a king. He decided to leave the palace and give the throne to the son, and he said, I'm just going on a little adventure to look at my territory. I'll be back after a while. Okay, that's what he thought. He was going to find the truth for himself, and he went out. So he gave his son the child, and that's where the story picks up, his adventures. On one of his encounters, he was so obsessed with seeking the truth that he didn't even want to live a moment without seeing the truth in everything. Now, it happened that in those days, it was common in India to be a beggar, to be a holy beggar. They call it mendicant. Or this is a type of spiritual practitioner who's a sannyas. He's renounced the world, and now he's with begging bowl, going from place to place. So he was one of those. And he was hungry, and it came that evening to a rich man's house. So and generally speaking, people in India respected that, if a holy man comes to your door, you feed them, you even put them up. It was considered a blessing, good luck for you. They actually raised it, but not everybody followed this. Yeah, the Muslim community didn't agree to this so much. So anyway, he came to this rich man's house, went up the steps, knocked on the door. It was it was during the monsoon season. It was raining and so on. So he needed shelter for the night, and he was prepared to do work for it. He said, "Oh, I'm quite handy. I can do anything. I just give me. I want a bowl of rice, bowl of food, and there's just a place to sleep anywhere away from the torrential rain, and I'll do any work that you ask me to." Now, seeing his haggard appearance at the doorstep, the two guards at the door said, "No, you're not coming in here. Look at the state of you. You're a tramp. This is the household of so and so, some rich man. He said he cannot have you in his building. You'll stain the purity." So they kicked him and said, "Go away." He said, "I'll do anything. I'll even sleep in the barn, right? Just give me some food." And he said, "No." And because they got a bit aggressive with him, they dragged him down the stairs by the feet first. So his head, as he was being dragged, so they were dragging him, walking in front, and his head was behind them on the step, going boom, 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 hitting the step. And every time it hit the step, he was praising the Lord's name so earnestly that he almost went into samadhi. And when it came to the bottom of the step and it finished, then he bitterly complained. He said, "Oh Lord, why have you abandoned me? I enjoyed these last few moments with you." He said, "Now we've come to the end." So he saw suffering as a blessing because it reminded him of his Lord. Every time he thought, this is the end, I'm going to die now. Bumping your head, eventually can split the skull open and die. Yeah? But he took it positively. Imagine that. Others would have been angry. How dare they do this to me? I'm a mendicant, I'm a monk, I'm, doing this. No. He was wise. So he took suffering differently. So, it's our understanding, our level of understanding that determines how we see things. We can either take things very personally, if we really identify with the Jeev, the character we're playing, or we could say, it's just part of the script, it will pass, like everything else always passes. How many times have you been through suffering, think this is the end, and it's always passed? It always does, yet you fall for it every single time. When the suffering comes, you still think, this is it, oh no, how am I going to get out of this one? And you've forgotten how many times you've already passed. So a wise man will say, okay, let it just pass, because historically, that's what's always happened. Whatever the outcome is, I'm not going to be interested in the outcome. I'm going to stick to the truth seeker. I'm a truth seeker above all. I don't particularly care about the outcome. Whichever way it goes, Lord, you decide. When you hand over everything to the Lord, do you think the Lord is going to do bad by you? That's why they say, do everything in the Lord's name, and the Lord will make your path straight. That's the promise that they say. So if you do everything in the Lord's name, he straightens the path. He makes it all work for you. Even if it looks bad in the beginning, somehow it works out in the end okay. So karma is a useful tool, and suffering is a very useful tool. Without suffering, boy, you would have a trouble with this. You would never leave. Suffering is the single most important influencer in your life that allows you to question the creation and get out. Otherwise you'd never leave it. You'll be forever trapped in illusion. You'd never enjoy the higher states of your existence. So suffering has to be there to direct you out. Coupled with wisdom, because suffering without wisdom makes you an angry, bitter, resentful person. Yeah? But when wisdom accompanies suffering, this is a combination. Like I say, a bird can only fly with 2 wings. You can only clap with 2 hands. You need both. Wisdom on its own, without suffering, you just become a forever debater. You become a philosopher, endlessly debating, but never doing anything. And if you're just a sufferer without wisdom, you become a miserable so-and-so. Yeah? You're suffering for nothing. You're suffering in vain. But when you add suffering to wisdom, you have a powerful tool to progress through this journey of life for yourself. And that's exactly what masters bring. They use this means. So it's not that they go against karma. They use the karmic system to help you. So when you're suffering and you call upon the master, let the master decide the mode of this suffering. See the learning in this, the wisdom behind this. Apply the wisdom you know to see this suffering through. And master's promise will be fulfilled. He will make your path straight. He will straighten it out in the end. It will be okay. You will survive. Yeah? And move on to the next point, the next phase in your life. So never look upon anything negatively, because if you do so, you're subscribing to the negative power, the judgment game. Because negativity is a judgment. It carries a judgment. I don't like this. You're judging. And whenever you go down the judgment game, you're subject to the negative part of karma, which is a consequence, a negative consequence. And if you don't like negative consequences, don't go down the judgment game. So if you look at it positively in the Lord's name, it's a very different experience. That's why sometimes you can see 2 people near each other experiencing both the same difficulty. One is joyfully going through it because they think, well, it'll pass in the end. It's only going to be for a limited time. Why get hot up about it? Why upset it? Make it worse for myself by getting miserable about it. And no one says, wow, you don't know, this is really bad. Why has it happened to me? Why me? Yeah? So one is negative, the other one's positive. Same event. So I prefer to choose the positive way of looking at things. And that's the way the masters direct us. Whatever comes our way, always look at it from a positive point of view and engage the Lord in this. Ask the Lord, what is the significance of this? Ask for the meaning in it. Then the suffering phases away. Because you're no longer involved emotionally. Now you're intellectualizing. You're asking the master, what's the significance? You become now distracted from the pure brutality of it or difficulty of it, and now it becomes a mission to discover the truth of it all. Yeah? So then when you start asking, it becomes, but you have to practice. If you keep on practicing, you become a master of this. But that is if it's in a need for you. You've had enough with this world and you want out. Then you'll practice, then you'll do the things necessary to get out. But if you still got some mileage left in you, you so carry on suffering then, yeah? How long more before you get the idea? You see? So that's what we mean by this need and the role of suffering and karma. Hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, that's it, I think.
So dehi paje har ki sev pajo gobind pul mat ja मानस जानम का एही लाभ